And in this video, we will be covering a player who I think is the biggest sleeper prospect in the 2019 NBA draft class, and I think as of right now he is the #1 point guard prospect in the 2019 NBA draft, and hardly anybody has heard about him.
So, I've gotten a lot of predictions wrong over the years. I will fully admit that, but I definitely got this one right. And Ja Morant did become not only the best point guard in the 2019 class, but the #2 pick of the 2019 draft. What I didn't expect was that he would be drafted by my favorite team, the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, we're going to get into that a little bit. Also, if you want to see the full video that I made of Ja Morant 3 years ago, you can see that in the card I just included in the video. But yeah, his sophomore year in 2019, all of his stats improved. Literally everything improved. And more crazy, he put his name in the national spotlight with dunks like this and dunks like this, where he literally jumped over a defender's head, and then dunks like this, and then of course finally dunks like this. So Ja Morant's athleticism skyrocketed his draft stock, but in this 2019 mock draft from 3 days after I posted that video a few years ago, he was the 13th pick projected at the time. And a big reason I had Ja as the #1 point guard prospect before a lot of people did was because there were really quite literally like no point guards projected to go high at the time, as Morant, Darius Garland, Cody White, and Ty Jerome were actually the only 4 point guards picked in the first round of the 2019 draft. Now, let's get to the Memphis Grizzlies and how Ja Morant ties into the story here. Because really, the Grizzlies weren't supposed to get a player like Ja Morant, and the franchise was in a really bad state at the time. Like, the 2017 to 2019 Grizzlies were absolutely awful. It was the post-grit and grind era. They were trying to find an identity. There was a lot of leadership issues, and the whole thing was just a big giant mess. And the thing is, even with Ja Morant in 2021, the Grizzlies, even though they're in the play-in tournament, even though they've been somewhat successful, are still the least valued franchise in the league. And there has been rumors of the past that they could potentially move. Now, we're going to get into the dynamics of this a little bit. First of all, even if they wanted to, it would probably be pretty difficult for them to move anytime in the near future because of the way the lease is set up with the FedEx Forum. It'd be pretty hard to do it until at least 2027. And the owner, Robert Pera, has openly said he has no interest in moving the team, but there's some interesting dynamics here, and we're going to get into that. I want to emphasize, I've been a lifetime Grizzlies fan. I was born in the city. I did move away from Memphis in 2001, but I certainly would not want to see them move. That being said, this might make a lot of Grizzlies fans mad by me saying this, but I don't think it's a complete impossibility either, although unlikely. I do think it is more unlikely since the NBA announced they prefer to expand instead of moving any teams, but I'm going to get into why this isn't going to be impossible for them to move either. This is Robert Pera. He's one of the more low-key profile owners in the NBA, and he said the team will be here long-term. I wouldn't want to do anything with the relocation. However, there's more to the story, because in an interview in December 2018, I'm highlighting this, he said, Memphis is as a convenient a place as any. So yeah, there should be no concern. And then a few months later, there was a report saying he inquired about moving the franchise. Now, the guy who led open this report has openly criticized Pera in the past, so I don't know how much credence there is to this. But I will say this, from reading interviews on Pera in the past, the vibe I've gotten is he does not want to move the team, but if business got bad enough, I think he probably would. That is going to make a lot of Grizzlies fans mad. I don't want them to move, but I'm going to be honest, he probably would move the team if business got bad enough. And business was pretty bad before Ja Morant came, and I'm basically going to explain why Ja Morant could potentially, and I mean literally, be the savior of the Memphis Grizzlies staying in Memphis. He is a big name that the Grizzlies haven't had before. Yes, we had the grit and grind era, but they were a good team with lower profile names. There weren't any superstars. Whereas we have a player in Ja Morant who is a national spotlight name with a lot of media marketability that could be a potential superstar, as shown by him winning Rookie of the Year in 2020. Memphis did have a solid reputation during the grit and grind era, but once that ended, that downward spiral went really quick, and their reputation, I don't really curse much, but honestly, their reputation became absolute shit. I mean, really, it was absolute shit in the post grit and grind era. An example of this is during the 2018 draft, when we drafted Jaren Jackson Jr. 4th overall. It was actually reported that he did not want to come to Memphis, and he had a lot of reservations. He did talk to the front office, and they kind of convinced him that it would be okay. But his initial reaction, it was reported live on draft night on ESPN, that he didn't want to come to Memphis. So the franchise was in a pretty bad state. But then we got Ja Morant, who's a player who is loved by LeBron James's two sons. Why I mention this is because this shows the marketability of him when the biggest global superstar of the 21st century's two sons, one of their favorite players is Ja Morant. And he's done well this year, and the Grizzlies have improved even more. And although we are still the lowest valued franchise in the NBA technically, there has been team success, and we have really what is our first potential superstar ever. Yes, Pau Gasol was an all-star when he played for us, but he didn't really reach that global star status until he played with the Lakers. But now we have a player in Ja Morant who is easily one of, and I'm sure in the opinion of some, the most exciting young point guard in the league. And in his last 23 games, he improved his shooting efficiency this season as he shot over 38% from three, which is a huge plus because if he can get that going, he's really going to be unstoppable going into the future. Now tonight, we have the biggest game of Ja Morant's career, where he's in the play-in tournament against the San Antonio Spurs, and he is trying to make a big impact for this Memphis team. This one would be huge. Beating the Lakers or the Warriors probably would be a huge obstacle, but you never know what can happen. That being said, bringing the story full circle, I do think that Ja Morant could potentially, probably even, have been the saving grace for this Memphis franchise staying in Memphis. I really do. I think that it's highly unlikely they would move, and the owner has said that, but there also has been conflicting reports. And again, the vibe I got was that if business continued to struggle mightily and we didn't have any big star names, then he would consider it. I just highly doubt he wouldn't in that scenario. However, we're in a different scenario now. We're in a much brighter scenario, and that is that we did get Ja Morant, and he is one of the more marketable young stars in the NBA, and he's a player with a personality, force, and persona that the Grizzlies haven't had. So, not to mention, they did change the management once they got Morant, and our drafting evaluators and decision makers have made better decisions. For example, they got Desmond Bane 30th overall in last year's draft, who probably was a lottery talent. Same with Brandon Clark the year before when they got him in the 20s. So they're making some good decisions, but it's still a small market. But with Ja, you could potentially get some players there that could make this team contend in the future. And the future is now very bright for Memphis. It was not a few years ago, but as a Grizzlies fan, I'm really excited that Ja has brought a lot of hope to the city and to the franchise, and moving forward, this is a big play-in tournament, but even if they don't win, Ja Morant is progressing, and his third year in 2022, who knows, he could potentially be an all-star, and he's a player who will likely be one of the bigger names of the 2020s in terms of the NBA, and I'm super excited to see what happens moving forward.